The cashier at O'Malley's Hardware didn't flinch when Linda, my wife of 20 years, grabbed Mark's hand across the paint samples. "You know, Mark," she said, her voice carrying, "Dale always picks the most boring colors." My younger brother squeezed her fingers back. A smirk played on his lips. He never did have an eye for anything vibrant, did he? My world narrowed to their hands, their words, their shared contempt. The garage air hung heavy with the smell of oil and stale coffee. Dale, 52, leaned over the open hood of a rusted Ford pickup, a 14-millimeter wrench cold in his grip. His head throbbed, a dull, relentless ache that had started mid-morning and now felt like a drum solo behind his eyes. He'd been working this job for 30 years, and days like this, Tuesdays, felt the longest. He tightened the bolt, gritting his teeth against a fresh wave of pain. "Dale, you look like death warmed over," Beth said from the doorway of his office. She held a stack of invoices. Her voice, usually sharp, had a note of worry. Beth had been his secretary since he bought the place from Old Man Peterson. She saw everything. "Just a headache, Beth," he mumbled, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. The fluorescent lights hummed, amplifying the pressure in his skull. She walked closer, her small frame radiating a quiet concern. "You shouldn't be driving like this. Your hands were shaking when you changed that tire earlier. Let me take you home. My Civic's running fine today, for once." Her old Honda was a running joke, always needing something. He didn't argue. The thought of navigating rush hour traffic with his head splitting was too much. "All right, Beth, thanks." He finished up, locked the shop, and walked out to her car, the late afternoon sun a fresh assault on his eyes. The ride was mostly quiet, the drone of the Honda's engine a low comfort. As they turned onto Elm Street, Dale saw it. Linda's red Mazda tucked into the driveway beside his two-story Colonial. And then, parked haphazardly behind it, Brenda's silver Range Rover. A familiar, unpleasant knot tightened in his gut. Brenda was Linda's sister, 3 years younger, and the one who always seemed to encourage Linda's wilder impulses, her desire for excitement. Every time Brenda was in town, things felt off. He thanked Beth, the words a little slurred with fatigue, and watched her pull away. He stood for a moment, the spring air cool against his face. The ache in his head seemed to dull slightly, replaced by a different kind of pressure. He found the front door unlocked, as usual. He pushed it open, stepping into the quiet foyer. The house was too silent for two women to be inside. He heard a faint murmur, then a laugh drifting from the kitchen at the back. Linda's high, excited tone, followed by Brenda's throaty, almost cynical chuckle. He paused, leaning against the cool wall of the hallway, intending to slip past and head straight up the stairs to bed. No small talk, just sleep. Then Linda's voice, clear and loud, cut through the quiet. "He has no idea, Brenda. Seriously, Dale's so wrapped up in his precious garage, he wouldn't notice if I danced naked in front of him, covered in Christmas lights." Brenda's laugh again, longer this time. "Well, that's a picture. But how's Mark handling all this sneaking around? Is he enjoying the drama?" Dale froze. Mark, his younger brother. The name felt like a physical blow, sharper than any wrench could deliver. His headache, which had been a dull roar moments before, vanished, replaced now by a roaring in his ears that had nothing to do with pain. Linda's voice, now laced with an unbearable affection, continued. "Mark loves it, Brenda. He says it's the best revenge he could get on his perfect older brother." The words hung in the air, each one a separate, precise laceration. Dale's vision blurred at the edges. He pushed himself away from the wall, his body suddenly light, yet rooted to the spot. Linda was still talking. "He makes me feel 20 again, Brenda. Not like, well, you know, we meet at the gym for coffee, sometimes a hotel room if we can swing it. Dale wouldn't even guess. He's too busy being Dale." Her voice held a contempt Dale had never heard directed at him before. He heard the clinking of glasses, the sound of ice. "What about Kyle and Sam?" Brenda asked, her tone flat. "Doesn't he worry about them? Doesn't Mark?" Linda scoffed. "Please, Dale barely registers as a father. Mark actually shows up to their games. He even helped Sam with that science project last week, the one Dale swore he was too busy for." Dale sees what he wants to see, Brenda, and what he wants to see is his perfectly ordered little world. Not me. The roaring in Dale's ears intensified. His hands began to tremble, a fine tremor that started in his fingers and vibrated up his arms. He could smell coffee, something sweet. He imagined them sitting at his kitchen table discussing him, his life, his brother. It was all a game to them. He felt a sudden, desperate need for air, for silence. Without making a sound, Dale turned. He walked back to the front door, his movements stiff and deliberate, as if he were walking on ice. He pulled the door shut behind him, the click echoing in the sudden emptiness of the porch. The spring air, which moments ago had felt merely cool, now felt sharp, a knife's edge against his skin. He looked down the street, watching for Beth's little Civic, but it was long gone, the corner empty. The pavement felt hard beneath Dale's worn work boots as he walked away from his house. He didn't have a destination in mind, just a desperate need to put distance between himself and the voices that still echoed in his head. The sun, a warm presence just an hour ago, now felt distant, its light fading to a pale orange. He passed the old brick high school where he and Linda first met at a football game, her hair bright under the Friday night lights. He remembered the crisp autumn air, the way her hand felt in his. Now the memory was ash. He walked past the Methodist church where they'd been married, the stained glass dark and unlit. The vows, the promises, the quiet confidence that had filled him that day. They were all a cruel joke. Every turn, every familiar shop front, every tree-lined street felt like a fresh wound. The park where he'd taught Kyle to ride his first two-wheeler, holding the back of the seat, running until his own breath gave out, cheering when Kyle finally pedaled on his own. All of it was now tainted, smeared with the bitter knowledge that Linda had found him, Dale, boring, too busy. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again, a few minutes later. He knew it was Linda, then a different pattern of vibration, shorter, more insistent. Mark. He let it ring, let the sound die, the digital silence louder than any ringtone. He couldn't speak to them, couldn't pretend. The perfect family charade had shattered, and he was left holding the broken pieces. The sky deepened to a bruised purple as he eventually found himself standing in front of Joe's Bar and Grill. The neon sign, a faded red, flickered on, casting a dim glow on the sidewalk. He hadn't been to Joe's in months, not since that last round of beers with Mark before he left for that construction job out of state, the one that supposedly kept him so busy. It was a place for regular guys, for after-work drinks, for forgetting the day. Tonight he needed to forget more than just the day. He pushed through the heavy wooden door. The air inside was warm, thick with the scent of stale beer and fried food. The place was mostly empty, a couple of older guys nursing glasses at a corner table. The television above the bar muted, showing a baseball game. Jim, the bartender, a man whose face was a roadmap of late nights and tough stories, looked up as Dale sat on a stool. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Jim said, a slight smile on his lips. "Long time, Dale. The usual?" Dale shook his head. "No, Jim. Not tonight. Give me a whiskey." "Neat." Jim's eyebrows lifted a fraction. Dale was a beer guy, always had been. Miller Lite, maybe a Budweiser if he was feeling fancy. Jim set a clean glass in front of him, poured a generous 2 fingers of amber liquid. The ice clinked softly as he set the bottle back. "Everything all right, Dale?" Jim asked, wiping down the bar with a practiced hand. His tone was casual, but the question hung in the air. Dale picked up the glass, the rim cool against his fingers. He took a slow sip, the whiskey burning a path down his throat. It was sharp, unforgiving. "You ever think you know someone completely, Jim?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Like you'd bet your life on knowing exactly who they are, what they'd do." Jim paused his wiping, leaning on the bar. His eyes, tired but shrewd, met Dale's. "People are complicated, Dale. That's what I've learned after all these years." He gestured vaguely around the room to the empty stools, the faint echoes of countless other troubled conversations. Dale shook his head, a hollow laugh escaping his lips. "No, people aren't complicated, not really. People are either honest or they're not. Loyal or they're not. That's about it, isn't it?" Jim didn't argue. He just reached for the bottle again, pouring Dale another shot without being asked. He knew the signs. Someone not being honest with you? He asked, his voice quiet. Dale swallowed the second shot in one go. The burn was less intense this time, a duller ache. He looked at his reflection in the polished wood of the bar, a stranger staring back. My wife, he said, the words heavy and flat, is sleeping with my brother. Jim stopped wiping. He just stood there for a moment, the rag limp in his hand, his expression unreadable. Then he finally spoke, his voice barely audible above the hum of the refrigerator behind him. Mark? Your brother Mark? Dale just nodded, a slight, almost imperceptible dip of his head. He didn't want to elaborate, didn't want to hear the disgust, the pity. He could feel it in the quiet. He says it's for revenge, Dale added, the words bitter. For something he thinks I did or didn't do. I don't really care about the details anymore, Jim, not really. All I care about is what happens next. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen lit up with 3 missed calls from Linda, 2 from Mark. A text from Linda. Where are you? Are you okay? Call me. Another from Mark. Heard you're not feeling well. Need anything? The perfect family charade, as Linda had called it, felt like a distant, grotesque memory. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. I'm thinking, Dale said slowly, his gaze fixed on the bottom of his empty glass, that it's time to change the rules. The next morning, Dale walked into Dale's garage and auto repair with a fixed expression, a practiced mask of normalcy. His head still throbbed, not from a migraine this time, but from the raw emptiness that had settled in his chest. The fluorescent lights seemed even harsher, the familiar scent of oil and gasoline a dull irritant. Beth looked up from her desk, her brow furrowed. Dale, you look like you haven't slept a wink. Are you sure you're okay to be here? He managed a grimace that he hoped passed for a smile. Never better, Beth, just a lot on my mind. He walked past her desk, heading for his office, the door clicking shut behind him. Listen, he said, poking his head back out. I need you to clear my schedule. Everything. For the next few days, at least. Tell everyone it's a family emergency. Beth's eyes, usually sharp and knowing, widened slightly. The unusual urgency in his voice, the clipped tone, didn't escape her. A family emergency? She echoed, but Dale was already back in his office, closing the door. He sat behind his desk, the familiar oak a cold comfort beneath his hands. His first call was to John Miller, his old high school friend, now a senior partner at Miller & Associates, attorneys at law. They'd played football together, double-dated in college. John was the steady type, methodical. John, it's Dale. Dale, how are you? Haven't heard from you in a while. John's voice was bright, oblivious. Not good, John, not good at all. Dale took a deep breath, the words surprisingly easy to say, stripped of all emotion. Linda's sleeping with my brother, Mark. I need a divorce lawyer, and I need to know my rights regarding the kids. Kyle and Sam. There was a stunned silence on the other end, long and heavy, punctuated only by the distant sounds of an active law office. Jesus Christ, Dale, John finally said, his voice dropping, hushed. Are you sure? I heard her say it, John, her own words. About Mark, about the revenge, about everything. So yeah, I'm sure. Dale's voice remained flat, devoid of the tremor he felt deep inside. I need to move fast before she realizes I know, before she has a chance to spin it. John Miller, true to form, shifted instantly into professional mode. The easygoing friend disappeared, replaced by the sharp, focused lawyer. All right, Dale, this is going to be tough, but we'll get through it. First things first, you need to secure your assets. I want you to go to the bank, get any joint accounts separated, take half. Not greedy, just what's yours. Then, we need to establish residency for the kids. Get them out of the house. Stay with a friend or family member for a few days. Don't confront her yet. We want to control the narrative. I'll draft some papers, get an injunction if necessary. Do you have a safe place for the boys? Dale nodded, though John couldn't see it. Bill, my friend Bill, he'd help. By noon, Dale had a detailed plan laid out, a roadmap through the rubble of his life. He called Bill, who didn't ask questions, just said, Anytime, Dale. You and the boys are welcome. He arranged for a locksmith, claiming he'd lost his keys for 2 o'clock. Linda's yoga class was from 1 to 2:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Plenty of time. At 2 o'clock, a young man from Locks and Keys arrived. Dale stood by, watching him change out every lock on the house. The click of the new tumblers felt definitive, a cold, hard line drawn. By 3, Dale was pulling his truck up to the curb in front of Crestwood Elementary. Kyle, 10, and Sam, 7, were waiting by the flagpole, their backpacks slung over their shoulders. He told them to pack a small bag, just for a sleepover at Uncle Bill's. They piled into the truck, their usual chatter a faint backdrop to the storm in his mind. He'd packed their overnight bags himself, their favorite pajamas, a couple of toys, a change of clothes. The simple act had felt like a eulogy. "Dad, what's going on?" Kyle asked from the back seat, always the more perceptive one. "Why are we taking stuff to Uncle Bill's? Is Mom coming?" Dale gripped the steering wheel. "Your mom and I," he started, the words tasting like sawdust. "We need some time to figure some things out. So you guys are going to stay with Uncle Bill for a few days, just until things settle down." Sam, quieter, piped up from his booster seat, his lip trembling slightly. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The directness of the question hit him like a physical blow. He glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting Sam's wide, fearful eyes. "Look, whatever happens, it's not your fault, okay? And I'm not going anywhere. Ever." Kyle, however, wasn't looking at him. He was staring out the window, his gaze distant, thoughtful. "Mom's different when he's around," he said softly, almost to himself. "Happier. And sometimes, when you're working late, he comes over and they talk really quiet in the kitchen." The words hung in the air, cold and undeniable. Dale felt a sickening lurch in his stomach. His son, his 10-year-old son had seen it, had quietly observed the truth that he, Dale, had been too blind, too trusting, too wrapped up in his precious garage to notice. The revelation was a fresh wave of pain, a stark, brutal testament to his own unwitting failure. The truck hummed along the familiar streets, the boys quiet in the back, lost in their own thoughts. Dale kept his eyes on the road, watching the last sliver of sun disappear behind the old water tower. Just as he pulled into Bill's driveway, his phone vibrated in the cup holder. "Linda." He stared at the name for a moment, then picked it up. This time he answered, "Where are my children?" The words burst from the phone, shrill and laced with panic. He could picture her standing in the foyer of their house, seeing the newly installed locks, walking into the empty bedrooms, the absence of his sons a sudden gaping void. Dale kept his voice even, steady, for the boys' sake. They were already out of the truck, walking towards Bill's front door. "Our children are safe, Linda. They're with me." "What do you think you're doing?" she screamed, the sound sharp enough to cut. "You can't just—" "I can," Dale cut her off, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "And I did. I know about you and Mark, Linda." The line went silent, a sudden echoing vacuum that seemed to stretch on forever. He heard her breath, ragged and shallow, then a long, slow exhale. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped to a venomous whisper, colder than any ice. "You don't know anything. You think you can just take my sons? What kind of monster are you?" "Our sons," Dale corrected, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. "And yes, for now, they're with me. I've spoken to John Miller. He advises you speak with counsel immediately." He felt a strange detachment, as if he were discussing someone else's life, someone else's betrayal. Linda's control shattered. She launched into a tirade, a torrent of threats. She'd accuse him of abuse. She'd say he was an unfit father. She'd make sure he lost everything. She'd make sure he never saw the boys again. Her voice was trembling now, a mix of rage and terror. "You'll regret this, Dale. I swear to God, you'll regret this." Dale listened, his gaze fixed on the quiet, darkened street. The threats washed over him, empty and desperate. "I have enough evidence to make sure you lose everything, Linda," he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. "Just think about what Mark said about revenge." Then, without another word, he pressed the end call button. The line went dead. A cold resolve, sharp and clear, settled over him, despite the ache in his chest that felt like a fist constantly clenching and unclenching. He turned off the truck and got out, walking towards Bill's house, where the warm glow of the porch light spilled out onto the lawn. Over the next few days, the calls from Linda escalated. They started as shrill demands, shifted to tearful pleas, then spiraled back into accusations and threats. He let most of them go to voicemail, listening to the fractured messages later, each one a different facet of her unraveling. He ignored the texts, the increasingly desperate words, a testament to the new reality he had forced upon her. Mark called too. His messages were different. Feigned concern for Linda, then a pathetic attempt to portray himself as a victim, a confidant caught in the middle. "Look, Dell, I know things look bad," Mark's voice crackled through the phone one evening. "But Linda, she was just confused. You weren't there for her. I was just trying to help, man. You know how she gets." Dale deleted the message without listening to the end. He focused on the boys. He explained to Kyle and Sam that their mother needed to sort out some things and that they would be staying with Uncle Bill for a little while longer. He kept the raw, ugly truth of the betrayal locked away, shielded them from the fallout. He watched them play in Bill's backyard, listened to their easy chatter, and found a quiet strength in their innocence. Bill, his best friend since kindergarten, was an anchor in the storm. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer advice unless Dale asked. He just made sure the boys had clean clothes, warm meals, and a safe place to land. He sat with Dale late into the night, nursing a beer, offering a silent presence that was more comforting than any words could have been. The world outside felt like it was crumbling, but inside Bill's quiet home, a different kind of foundation was being laid. The divorce proceedings began with a brutal efficiency that felt disorienting. Linda, represented by a lawyer whose reputation for aggression preceded him, fought with a ferocity Dale hadn't anticipated. It was a calculated attack designed to dismantle his character, to reframe the narrative. She accused him of emotional neglect, of being consumed by his work, always putting the garage before his family. She attempted to paint him as the unreasonable party, the cold, unfeeling husband who had abandoned his wife and children. Each accusation was a dull thud against the shell he'd built around himself, but they still stung. Mark surprisingly made an attempt to mediate. He left voicemails, sent texts, always under the guise of family concern. "Dale, man, this isn't good for anyone. Linda's hurting. We need to talk. Clear the air." Dale saw through it instantly, the transparent attempt to control the fallout. He deleted every message without listening past the first few seconds. "Her lawyer's playing dirty," John Miller warned over the phone one evening. "They're going after your character, trying to make you look like a bad father. It's a classic move to chip away at your custody rights." Dale listened, his gaze fixed on the rain streaking down his office window. He maintained his stoic front, sifting through his memories, providing John with every casual admission Linda had made, every detail that could be used as evidence. The morning in the kitchen, her words about Mark's revenge, her disdain for his precious garage. It all came back with chilling clarity. Linda tried to involve Kyle and Sam. She would call them, asking innocent-sounding questions about their days, then subtly shift to Dale's parenting. "Is Dad making sure you do your homework? Does he remember to pack your lunch?" The boys, however, remained guarded, their answers short and unrevealing. Dale saw their loyalty, and it was a small, steady comfort. Then, Mark started showing up at school events. At Kyle's soccer game, Mark was there, leaning against the fence, cheering a little too loudly. At Sam's parent-teacher conference, he walked in with Linda, putting on a show of the caring uncle, the supportive figure. Dale watched this manipulation from a distance, a quiet fury brewing beneath his calm exterior. It was a performance designed to undermine him, to establish himself as a fixture in his sons' lives. "Patience, Dale," John Miller advised, his voice measured. "Let them play their hand. We have our ace card and they know it. The affair, Mark's involvement. We just wait for the right moment." The financial toll of the divorce began to weigh on Dale. Legal fees, maintaining two households, the uncertainty of the future. The garage was still busy, thankfully, but the numbers in his ledger were tightening. Still, his determination to protect his sons, to ensure their stability, overrode all other concerns. He would spend every last dime if it meant securing their future. Beth at the shop became an unexpected confidant. She didn't pry, didn't offer unsolicited advice. She just listened, her presence a quiet, unwavering support. She handled the business flawlessly, allowing Dale to focus on the legal mire. Her efficiency was a steadying force when everything else felt chaotic. Evenings were spent with Kyle and Sam, trying to build a new normal for them. Dinners at Bill's, board games, movie nights. Dale read to Sam, helped Kyle with his math homework. He reaffirmed his love and presence, making sure they knew without a doubt that he wasn't going anywhere. Sam seemed to adjust quicker, his younger mind more resilient. But Kyle, always the quiet, thoughtful one, struggled more. He was often withdrawn, staring out windows, lost in thoughts Dale couldn't penetrate. Dale sensed there was something more bothering Kyle, a shadow he couldn't quite articulate. The boy would start to speak, then stop, a word catching in his throat. It was more than just the divorce, more than just the shock of their parents splitting. Dale could feel it, a subtle undercurrent of unease that lingered around his older son. For all the turmoil, for all the ugly truths that had come to light, some things still remained hidden, buried beneath the surface. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Weeks blurred into months, each one a relentless grind of legal paperwork, court dates, and the draining emotional toll of the divorce. The initial shock had given way to a dull, persistent ache, a constant pressure beneath Dale's ribs. He kept working, kept providing, kept the garage running, but a part of him felt hollowed out. Kyle, usually a whirlwind of energy and questions, had become quieter, more withdrawn. His grades, once solid, had started to slip, and Dale noticed flashes of anger, quickly suppressed, followed by periods of deep sadness. He tried to talk to him, to ask what was wrong, but Kyle would just a shrug and his eyes cast down, muttering, "I'm fine, Dad." The words were hollow, a thin shield he held up against the world. One evening, after another particularly heated exchange in court between Linda's aggressive lawyer and John Miller, Dale came home to Bill's quiet house. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken tensions. He found Kyle sitting alone in the dark living room, illuminated only by the faint glow of a street lamp through the window. He was hunched forward, knees drawn up to his chest. Dale sat down on the couch beside him, the springs creaking softly. "Everything all right, son?" he asked, his voice low and gentle. He didn't push, just offered his presence. Kyle hesitated for a long moment, the silence stretching between them. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he finally spoke. "Mark was at the house a lot, Dad, when you were working late." Dale's breath caught in his throat. He waited, his heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm. "I know, buddy. He came over sometimes." "I thought he was just helping Mom," Kyle continued, his voice cracking slightly, like with a leaky faucet or something you didn't have time for. He lifted his head, and Dale could see the sheen of unshed tears in his eyes. "But then I started hearing things." Dale gently encouraged him, a quiet nod. "What kind of things, Kyle?" "Hushed conversations. At first," Kyle whispered, recounting the details as if pulling them from a deep, painful well. "After Sam and I were supposed to be asleep. And laughter. A lot of laughter." He swallowed hard, then continued, the words coming faster now, a dam breaking. "And then, one time I came downstairs for water. I saw them. In the kitchen." Kyle's voice dropped to an almost inaudible whisper. They weren't just talking, Dad. I saw them. Kissing. More than kissing." A tear finally tracked a path down his cheek. "I ran back upstairs. Before they saw me, I didn't know what to do." The truth hit Dale with a renewed, devastating force. But this time, it was mixed with the overwhelming pain of his son's shattered innocence. He had known the fact of the betrayal, had heard it from Linda's own mouth, but hearing it through Kyle's eyes, seeing the quiet burden his son had carried, was a different kind of anguish. "I tried to tell Sam it was normal," Kyle continued, scrubbing at his face with the back of his hand, "that grown-ups just hugged sometimes. But I knew deep down it wasn't right. It felt wrong." He looked up at Dale, his eyes wide and vulnerable. "Mom told me not to say anything, said you'd be mad at her and it would make things worse." Dale reached out, pulling his son into a tight, desperate hug. He held him close, burying his face in Kyle's hair. "Oh, Kyle, it's not your fault. None of this is your fault, and you are incredibly brave for telling me. So brave. He felt the tremor in Kyle's small body, the years of silent struggle compressed into that single confession. This confession, this direct, undeniable testimony, not just from his own ears, but from one of his sons. It wasn't just speculation or overheard boasts anymore. It was solid. It was devastating. He could feel the shift in the air, the turning of the tide. As soon as Kyle finally drifted off to sleep in his own room, Dale walked into the kitchen, his hand already reaching for his phone. He dialed John Miller's number, the late hour irrelevant. This changed everything for their case. Absolutely everything. John Miller, true to his word, acted swiftly. Kyle's confession, carefully documented and presented through a counselor, became a powerful and devastating piece of leverage against Linda's increasingly desperate claims. The revelation that their 10-year-old son had not only witnessed the affair, but had carried the secret, feeling the burden of his mother's silence, shattered the carefully constructed facade Linda's lawyer had tried to maintain. The emotional impact in the courtroom was undeniable, even to the most jaded observers. Mark, feeling the walls close in around him, made one last pathetic attempt to spin a narrative. He reached out to mutual acquaintances, trying to portray the affair as a misunderstanding, a brief moment of weakness in a difficult time for Linda. But Dale, through John Miller, presented a clear, chilling picture of Mark's premeditated actions, fueled by the desire for revenge against his perfect older brother. The recordings of Linda's boasts, combined with Kyle's raw testimony, left little room for doubt. The court-mandated mediation sessions became a tense, ugly battleground. Linda, realizing the depth of the hole she had dug for herself, became increasingly desperate and erratic. Her threats shifted to tearful pleas, then back to angry accusations, all in rapid succession. She still tried to justify her choices, to deflect blame, but the weight of the evidence and the unblemished honesty of her own son was too much to overcome. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with tired but discerning eyes, clearly indicated a strong leaning toward the Dale for primary custody. The children's welfare was paramount, and Kyle's innocent but damning account left no question as to who could provide the most stable environment. News of Mark's involvement, once a whispered rumor, began to spread like wildfire through their small community. His real estate business, built on trust and local connections, started to falter. Clients canceled, old friends turned away. Cornered and desperate, Mark lashed out at Dale, a string of hateful texts blaming him for ruining his life, for being a sanctimonious bastard. There was no repentance, no acknowledgement of his own actions, only a bitter, unadulterated rage. Dale ignored them all, deleting each message without a reply. Linda, facing the reality that she was losing everything, her sons, her reputation, her comfortable life, finally broke down. In a closed-door session with her lawyer and John Miller, she admitted the affair, though she still tried to justify her choices, blaming Dale's perceived emotional distance and his devotion to the garage. The admission was hollow, offered not out of remorse, but out of a desperate attempt to salvage something. The boys, especially Sam, struggled with the public knowledge. Kids at school talked. Whispers followed them. Sam, particularly, found it hard to reconcile the Uncle Mark he knew with the man who had betrayed his father. Dale focused relentlessly on protecting them from the ugliness, shielding them from the raw details as much as possible, providing a quiet, unwavering stability. Their routines were his priority. Their peace was his mission. John Miller expertly navigated the final stages. He ensured Dale secured full custody of Kyle and Sam, with supervised visitation for Linda. It was a compromise but a necessary one to ensure the boys' safety and well-being. The financial settlement was less than Dale initially wanted, a significant chunk of his savings going to cover legal fees and spousal support for a limited time. But he agreed. Prioritizing a swift end to the ordeal and the boys' peace was more important than fighting for every last penny. Brenda, Linda's constant companion and enabler, who had encouraged Linda's recklessness, gradually disappeared from Linda's life. The fallout was too public, too messy for her to associate with. The calls stopped, the visits ceased. Linda was left to face the consequences largely alone. The final court hearing was a somber, understated affair. No grand pronouncements, just the cold, factual pronouncement of the judge. It marked the official end of Dale and Linda's 20-year marriage and the public acknowledgement of an affair that had destroyed a family. Dale felt no triumph, only a quiet, profound exhaustion. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning, a date Dale knew he would likely remember, but one that held no particular significance beyond the official end of things. The weight that had pressed down on his shoulders for months didn't vanish entirely, but it shifted, a heavy load replaced by a dull ache that he knew would linger. The scars, invisible but etched deep, remained. Linda moved out the following weekend. She took only a few boxes of personal belongings, leaving behind a hollow silence in the two-story colonial. Her red Mazda pulled away from the driveway, a final, definitive departure. Dale walked through the house after she was gone, the empty spaces echoing with memories, both good and now irrevocably bad. News traveled fast in their small community. Mark's real estate business, already reeling from the rumors, folded completely within weeks. He tried to sell a few remaining properties, but the well of trust had run dry. Eventually, he left town. Dale heard he went south to Texas maybe, seeking a fresh start where his name wouldn't carry the weight of his actions. Dale felt no satisfaction in this, only a quiet understanding of consequences. Dale dedicated himself to rebuilding his life with Kyle and Sam. Routines became paramount. School, homework, dinner, bedtime stories. He listened more, spoke less, trying to foster an open communication that had been missing for too long. He sold the colonial on Elm Street. Too many memories clung to its walls, too many ghosts in the corners. He found a smaller, cozier house on the edge of town with a big backyard and a porch swing, a fresh canvas for their new beginning. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the boys began to heal. Sam, ever resilient, found solace in the consistent presence of his father, in the predictability Dale now provided. His laughter, once muted, returned, echoing through the rooms of their new home. Kyle, still thoughtful and quiet, started thriving again in school. His grades climbed, and he found new interests, a new group of friends. The shadow that had clung to him for so long began to recede, replaced by a quiet confidence. Dale found renewed purpose in his garage. His hands, busy with tangible repairs, the honest work of fixing things, felt good. It was a stark contrast to the brokenness of his past, a reminder that some things, with patience and effort, could be made whole again. He still worked long hours, but now it was for a clearer purpose, for his boys, for their future. He occasionally saw Linda around town, a quick glimpse in the grocery store aisle, a fleeting reflection in a shop window. She was a ghost of her former self, thinner, her once vibrant presence dimmed. Her eyes held a haunted look, a stark reminder of the price she had paid for her choices. He felt no anger now, only a weary pity, and a quiet gratitude that he had moved on. Jim at Joe's Bar and Grill still offered a sympathetic ear. Dale still stopped by sometimes after work, but now he ordered a beer, a cold Miller Lite, the whiskey a distant memory, a relic of a darker time. The edge that had driven him to that first neat shot had dulled, replaced by a quiet acceptance. Beth continued to be an invaluable asset at the shop. Her quiet efficiency, her unwavering loyalty, had been a steadying presence when his world felt like it was spinning out of control. She was more than an employee. She was a quiet, constant friend. Dale learned that trust, once broken, may never fully mend. The cracks would always be there, a reminder of vulnerability. But forgiveness, even if not extended directly to Linda or Mark, was something he found he had to offer himself and for his sons. It was a shedding of the burden, a release of the poison. He found a quiet strength in solitude, in the simple rhythm of work and fatherhood. The dramatic lies and betrayals of the past seemed to belong to a different life. The stone path he'd laid with Linda in their old yard, that winding symbol of their shared future, now felt like a distant, faded memory, replaced by a new path, chosen by him and his boys, built on honesty and resilience. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments of quiet reflection on what had been lost. But it was honest, and for Dale, that was enough. He finally began moving forward, one quiet Midwestern day at a time, building a new real life, brick by painstaking brick. The days that followed were a testament to the fact that life, even when broken, finds a way to reform. Dale's world was smaller now, stripped of its comfortable illusions, but it was also clearer, harder, and built on a foundation of truth. He watched his sons heal, their laughter filling the new house with a sound that felt honest, untainted. He kept his hands busy at the garage, each repair a small act of restoration, a quiet defiance against the brokenness he had endured. Linda faded from his life, a casualty of her own making, her former vibrancy replaced by a gaunt shadow. Mark, the architect of his own ruin, vanished into the anonymity of another town, leaving behind only the bitter taste of betrayal. Dale understood that trust, once shattered, might never fully knit back together, but he also learned that a life built on honesty, even in its quiet solitude, held a profound strength. There was no grand triumph, no dramatic justice, only the slow, steady rhythm of moving forward, one quiet Midwestern day at a time, each step a testament to resilience, each breath a reclaiming of his own unvarnished truth. The end.